You're listening to the Happiest Lives podcast with Jill Lillard, episode number 10.
Welcome to the Happiest Lives podcast, where you'll learn to think better, feel better, and become the woman God says you already are. Here's your host, Jill Lillard.
Hello, friends. Welcome back. Today, we continue our series, How to Have Better Conversations. And I'm excited to tell you about a fantastic conversation-changing tool that I offer all my clients. I call it the talk table. I discovered it during a therapy session with one of my couples years ago. So in my office, there are two couches, and in between them is a glass coffee table. On it is a round wooden platter of decorative shellacked cacao pods. Now, I have to say cacao pods because one, it's fun to say, and two, it's what they are. This is where the heart of chocolate comes from, cocoa. So if you shake the pods, you can hear the beans rattle inside. They're super cool and they're really indescribable. From a botanical perspective, some say cacao is a fruit and others call it a berry, but it doesn't fit into any category. Like chocolate, it's indescribable and wonderful. So for the sake of understanding the talk table, it doesn't matter if you imagine cacao pods or marbles, but I give them credit because to me, they became the symbol of words and feelings as they sit on a wood platter on a table in my office. Just like these shellacked cacao pods I bought 20 years ago at a Crate and Barrel outlet in Chicago, our thoughts and feelings are indescribable and wonderful. That is what I think about your thoughts and feelings. And that's what I want you to think about the thoughts and feelings of those you love. I want you to find them fun and interesting so that you will treasure, love, and invite them. So I refer to the table in my office that holds the pods as the talk table. This is the place where a couple can share their thoughts and feelings. So I tell them to imagine that in their lap, they each have a platter of these cacao pods, and each pod represents one thought or feeling. And when they share their thoughts and feelings, they can imagine they're putting one of the pods on the table. And there's room on the table for all their thoughts and feelings. If one wants to put a pod on the table, she does not have to remove his pod. So the thoughts and feelings are not in opposition to one another. They both get to exist on this table. When we welcome another person's thoughts and feelings without owning them or resisting them, only then are we able to listen and understand. Every relationship needs a talk table. Without it, we are simply throwing our words at one another. We're talking at someone rather than talking to them. Now, you don't have to own cacao pods. In fact, you don't have to even have an actual table. Metaphorically, you can pull out your version of a talk table and invite another to share all their thoughts and feelings. This space is for conversations and welcoming new experiences as you're willing to think outside your box. As you use the talk table, you will become a better listener. It will help you if you tend to get emotionally flooded during conversations. So if you want to try out the talk table for your next conversation, I want to give you 4 tips so that you can get the most out of it. The first tip is to relax, be curious, make space. When you have conversations about areas of disagreement, make room for another person's perspective. It's crucial that you are making room for their perspective. We can only do this when we're calm and curious. One of the thoughts that make me feel calm and curious is there are 2 different perspectives of reality here, and that's okay. So let me expand on that a little bit. I want you to imagine an elephant in the middle of the room. Now, we'll call it an elephant so that it has a name, but let's imagine we never saw it before. And so we didn't even know what it looks like. And if I'm on one side of the elephant, if I'm on the back end and you're on the front end, we are looking at two very different things. You might describe what you see, these big ears and these little beady eyes and a nose that looks like a thick hose. Now, I'm not thinking you're wrong just because what I see from my rear view looks completely different. Though we see different things, there is nothing to argue about. Instead, we can listen calmly with curiosity and we make space together to have a fuller picture of what an elephant looks like. Another thought that I like is we are both right and wrong. So often we become defensive when a loved one shares with us. We act as though their thoughts are canceling out our thoughts, as if we believe that they can't think this. Like if they think that, then I'm not allowed to think this. Or if they're frustrated, then I can't be frustrated. If they're right, then that means I'm wrong. Instead, when we think, okay, they're right and they're wrong, and I'm right and I'm wrong, you make room on the table to listen and understand. Another helpful thought is I'm willing to increase the pool of possibility. When you receive another person's thoughts without judgment or defensiveness, you grow in wisdom, intelligence, creativity, and you open yourself up to new experiences. You open yourself up to possibility and growth. So why wouldn't we want to make space for that? When we only want what we want, we get set in our ways, we become willful, we end up debating, we stop listening. The cost could be the connection in your relationship. Is that worth it? If you can postpone being understood and first understand, you'll be richer for it. Allowing new ideas and perspectives on the table gives you a fuller and happier life. A second tip for getting the most out of your talk table is to look, but don't throw. Have you ever been in a conversation and the other person starts sharing and you begin to feel threatened? You don't like their thoughts and feelings. And metaphorically, as they set their paws on the table, you begin to pick them up and hurl them across the room. You remove them from the table. Now, you may not be throwing things, but so often I watch this happen as one person shares, the other person tenses up and stops listening as they resist what the other person is putting down. Inside my coaching groups, we call this getting into someone else's model. When we hop into someone else's model, their thoughts, feelings, actions, it includes their words, then we're going to get reactive. We start to judge, we resist, we stop listening, we start owning something that's not ours to own. You have forgotten that their thoughts reflect what is going on in their head. When we make their words about us, we feel responsible for their models, their thoughts, feelings, and actions, and we get emotionally flooded. However, when we put something on the table and think that someone else is allowed to put something on the table, then we're making space for both people's opinions and preferences. And we don't have to throw their pods. We don't have to throw their pods because we know that they both get to exist there. Just notice if you find yourself tensing up and wanting to hurl someone else's pods. Remember, it's because of your thoughts. Learn to pay attention to what you are thinking that makes you so upset about what they are thinking or feeling. If you can stay calm and ask questions to deepen understanding, then you're going to get somewhere. If you can't, the only place you will get is stuck. Take ownership of how you feel and let the other person's thoughts be there, even as you consider your thoughts about their thoughts. Also, remember that allowing and validating are not the same as agreeing. You aren't committing to agree or endorse what they say when you invite them to put their pods on the table. You're just deferring disagreement. Certainly, do not hurl your pods at them. Do not hurl their pods back at them. Make space for sharing by not owning. Remember, their thoughts can be there, yours can too. This is the beauty of the talk table. A third tip for making the most of this tool is don't skip the crucial middle step, which is acknowledgement. Acknowledging the pods that someone else put on the table, acknowledging their thoughts and feelings. So imagine having a conversation with someone you love. You are the speaker and you set your thoughts and feelings on the talk table. You might feel vulnerable as soon as you set your thought down, but then your partner starts to dive into their thoughts and feelings about the situation or tries to fix the problem. They pick up your pods. They didn't even acknowledge what you said. You don't know if they ever heard you or they didn't hear you. Based on what they're saying, it seems they weren't even listening. Do you know that feeling? Have you been there? I'm sure you have. We all have. We've been on both sides of that. You might feel hurt. You might feel frustrated, unimportant. And so I know I've been on both sides. I have not listened well. And there are times I have not felt heard. When I'm not actively listening, I may hear somebody's words. Then it's like I'm mentally checking a box off inside my head. And I think there's a few reasons I do this. It may be because I'm emotionally flooded. And so maybe I'm not even checking off the box. My brain just starts to shut down and I hop into wanting to explain and defend myself. So this is me hopping into their model. Or I want to make everything better because if I do, they will feel better. I will feel better. Once again, I'm in their model and I'm putting them in my model. I might be excited to share all my thoughts and feelings, so I plow forward without ever making sure I understood or acknowledged the precious items the other set on the table. So think of acknowledgement as the middle step of making a yeast bread. Baking bread with yeast is essentially made up of three parts. You mix the ingredients, you let the dough rise, and then you bake the bread. If you skip step 2, the bread will be dense and less flavorful. It's not going to be a fluffy, lovable loaf. Without the overflow of air bubbles created in the rising, you're left with dough. Just like it's crucial not to skip the middle step in baking bread, the middle step in a conversation is essential in creating emotional connections. We could say that the conversations are made up of three parts as well. So you listen, you acknowledge, and you share. You're listening to allow someone to set their thoughts and feelings on the talk table. And when you verbally acknowledge, you're communicating understanding. This is what I think you're saying. Is that correct? Or tell me more about that. And then that third part is you're sharing. This is when you put your pods on the table. You share your thoughts and feelings. When someone else sets an idea on the talk table and you verbally acknowledge it, you're communicating to them that you're listening. You let them look at what you think they said and clarify or explore further. This acknowledgement is for you as much as it is for them. So never skip this middle step. The last tip for making the most out of the talk table is don't hide your pods. We've talked about making room for someone else, but you are a vital part of the relationship. Your thoughts and feelings, your voice matters too. And so we want you to share your inner world with those you love. To me, having a voice doesn't mean dumping things on other people, making demands, or fighting for things to be my way. The more we understand that we do have a voice, the fewer words we may even need to use. Having a voice and bringing your pods to the table is showing up honestly, first with the Lord and then with others. You want to be in a relationship. And if you hide, you aren't showing up. You can only sustain this for so many years before you have an identity crisis. When there is incongruence between the inward you and who you are trying to be outwardly, a chasm builds. It not only grows in your relationship, but it can grow in your entire person. And I see this all the time as outwardly submissive women come to me midlife, ready to say goodbye to the life they lived for 20 years. The heart scan is the perfect tool to examine your pods and decide how you want to show up in in your life. And this is the tool that I teach all of my ladies inside my coaching programs. We go through the process of heart scanning, of exposing, renewing, engaging, and pressing on. This is a very effective way to validate your thinking and consider if your thoughts are serving you and if they're serving the greater whole. Bringing your examined pods to the table, you can make requests without demanding, you can calmly share without blaming, and authentically show up without pretending. If you want to use the talk table to invite calmer conversations, be sure that you do these 4 things. Relax and make space for all the pods. Don't throw someone else's pods. Don't skip the middle step of acknowledging the other person's pods, and certainly don't hide your pods. Now, remember, pods represent our thoughts and our feelings. I hope that you bring the talk table and invite all your thoughts and feelings to the conversations and invite other people's thoughts and feelings to the conversation. This is going to make your life and your relationship more interesting and fun as you make room for deeper conversations. And if you want to do more of this work, in addition to the coaching, the worksheet workshop, and application worksheets and scripture studies that you're getting this month in Clarity and Courage, there is a whole vault of other courses and lessons and tools inside Clarity and Courage. And there's a series in there, Making Space for We, and a whole month is devoted to the talk table. And there's some great printables in there that will help you use this tool. So you can join me anytime at Clarity and Courage. You can join and you can cancel anytime. And you can find it at www.myhappyvault.com. Thank you for listening today. Let's talk again next week as we continue this series on how to have better conversations.